Welcome to ECCB Connects, a production of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, where we share with you who we are, what we do, and how we serve you. On this episode, we speak with Director of the Currency Management Department, Rosbert Humphrey, about the EC Polymer Bank Notes. Rosbert discusses how the public has been handling these notes since their introduction in 2019, the status of the EC Paper Bank Notes, and looks ahead to the future of our EC currency. Do stay connected with us. We'll share more with you after this break.
The new family of EC Polymer Notes.
What is different about these notes?
The feel.
Polymer notes are made from a thin plastic film which makes the notes feel smoother than the paper notes.
The orientation.
The notes have a portrait orientation. You will read the notes from top to bottom instead of left to right as you do with the paper notes.
Unique tactile feature.
The front of each note has raised bumps at the top left-hand corner. These bumps form shapes that are familiar to you.
Holographic foil strip.
This feature is on the $20, $50, and $100. When you tilt the notes, the images and colors in this section will change.
New image on the $50.
The back of the $50 bears the image of former governor of the ECCB, the late Honorable Sir K. Dwight Venner.
New signature.
All the notes bear the signature of the current governor, Timothy N.J. Antoine.
EC Polymer Notes. Cleaner, safer, stronger.
Rosbert, welcome again to ECCB Connects.
Thank you, Karina. It's certainly my pleasure to be here once again.
Now, the ECCB introduced its family of polymer bank notes back in 2019 with three main reasons in mind. One, polymer is cleaner. Two, it's safer. Three, it's stronger. Give us the background behind these three reasons that influenced the ECCB's decision to transition from the paper notes to polymer notes.
Like you said, cleaner, safer, stronger. Those were the three reasons. Cleaner in the sense that it's much better for the environment because we are not going to actually dispose these shredded polymer banknotes at the landfill. Attempts to burn plastic would actually create a blob, right? It's like a big block. But with paper, it's different because it gets decayed in the process. So what we are going to do is to source a recycling plant that would be somewhere outside of the region so that they can actually recycle these plastic material into something tangible. Safer in the sense that it protects us from counterfeiters. The security features that are on the banknotes, it doesn't allow much for counterfeiting. Not only that, it would be very difficult for you to actually get that polymer material to start the counterfeiting process. Stronger in the sense that the plastic is much harder than, and it's much durable than paper, and it's difficult to tear. So in that case, in that sense, it's stronger.
Now, how has the public handled the transition from paper to polymer notes? I remember when we were making the transition, there was a campaign. People have been accustomed to the paper notes for many years. But since the introduction of the polymer, how has the public been handling the notes?
I think it's generally good. Although we are seeing some of the polymer banknotes with holes, indicative that there have been staples or something like that, tears. And we have seen those that have been shrunken, which means that they have come in contact with some heating agent, maybe a heater, iron or something like that. And we have seen notes that have some folds and some creases and some permanent crumples. So, but all in all, I think the public has been handling the notes quite good. The polymer bank notes have been lasting longer in circulation, and it just means that the public in general have been taking care of their banknotes.
And from your observation, which is the most popular note that the public generally uses?
Right now, it's the 5s and the 20s. They tend to run neck and neck. Currently, the 5s. The 5s.
And probably because it's easier to make change, it's something that, you take a bus, you buy a fruit, you buy a drink, it's easier to
and that's the lowest value in circulation. So I guess that's the main reason why, because it's generally popular. As you said, to make change, and your child asks you for something. It's $5. Well, although $5 doesn't really mean much these days to a child, but You know, $5 seem to be the most popular.
Rosbert, before there were polymer notes, we know there were the EC paper bank notes. What is the status of those paper bank notes?
Paper bank notes are still legal tender. They are co-circulating with the polymer bank notes, which means you can still spend them. So once you have paper bank notes, they're still legal tender for everyday transaction.
So merchants and vendors should continue to accept the notes?
Yes, they must continue.
Now going back onto something you mentioned in terms of the treatment of the polymer bank notes, what can persons do if they come into a note that's damaged, as you said, shrunken, perhaps there's a tear or a hole in it? What can persons do with those notes?
Okay, so we have the commercial banks in the Eastern Caribbean that are actually accepting these mutilated notes, as we call them, right, on behalf of ECCB. They have the valuation guidelines, so your damaged notes, your mutilated notes, your shrunken notes, your torn notes, it could be full value, it could be half value, it could be no value at all. I mean, you can have a big chunk of the note and it could have like no value. So the commercial banks have the valuation guidelines and they would actually give you value for those notes and submit them to ECCB periodically. So
there's no need to fear. I've encountered situations where I go into a particular store and the vendor doesn't want to accept a note because perhaps there's writing on it, there's a tear on it. There's no need to fear with that because you can still get value for your notes.
And you're correct, yeah.
Now we know, as you mentioned, there are a number of security features on the polymer bank notes, and in addition to that, there are some tactile features that help to distinguish the different notes, particularly for those persons who are visually impaired. Take us through some of those security features.
Well, you mentioned the first one. We have the tactile feature, if I can show you. So at the top left-hand corner of the banknote, we have some raised bumps on the banknotes. And this, like you said, for the blind and the visually impaired. So we have the circle on the 5. So the bumps form a circle on the 5. We have the bumps form an X on the 10. And this is easy to remember because X is the Roman numeral for 10. We have two horizontal lines that form a rectangle on the 20s. We have a triangle on the 50 and a square on the 100s. And this has been working well, especially for the visually impaired and the blind. And not only for them, but for those who can actually see, especially at nights. Okay, you don't have to pull out your pile to determine which banknote you have in your hand, but you just feel.
You can touch and feel.
Right. Other security features include, we have a holographic foil strip on the 20s, the 50s, and the 100s. And the reason for those denominations, because those are the higher value banknotes, and those are the ones that are more susceptible to counterfeiting. We also have a clear windowed triangle that's to the left of the Queen's face with a kind of engrave or rough feeling of the value of the banknote in that triangle, right? Any attempts to actually counterfeit these notes, right? This triangle or this clear area would just be gray or dark. We also have the same colors that we had on the paper banknotes which we replicate on the polymer, and this is for ease of identification because we didn't want to confuse
during the transition.
Right, we didn't want to confuse the public. What we did too is to have the images and the landmarks that are on the banknotes. We have them modernized. For example, the Trafalgar Falls in Dominica and the Admiralty Bay
in St.
Vincent. If you compare the paper, the images on the paper and those on the polymer, you would notice a slight difference, right? So that too is also a thing. The most notable difference on the banknotes or feature on the banknotes is that they are now in portrait orientation, right? The paper banknotes were in landscape. Right? And this we did with the public in mind, based on how they handle notes. Because when you're actually counting or handling money, you handle money like this. right? As opposed to, in a horizontal fashion. So those are some of the notable, most noticeable features that we actually have on the banknote. We also have some microprints on the banknote, but these you have to actually use a magnifying glass to actually pick up. You can't replicate those things. I mean, they will just form, like blurred images on any duplication.
So it's very difficult to try to copy or pass off a fake polymer note.
Correct.
Rosbert, as we close, we look back and think about all the changes that the EC currency has gone through. At one point, we had a paper $1 note. We've seen color changes, as you just spoke about. We've had changes in the orientation, the security features. As we look ahead, are there any plans to make further changes or modifications to the EC currency?
Yes. The image of the Queen has been a long-standing feature on the EC banknotes and coins. Now, with the passing of the Queen Elizabeth II, the Monetary Council has taken the decision to change the image of the Queen on the EC banknotes and coins. Discussions are in the infancy stage. We will be taking the decision to the public to get their feeling and for them to get a general sense of identity and to connect with the notes and basically a sense of ownership, right? So they can actually participate in the whole process.
So they'll get a chance to weigh in on
Exactly.
this significant change.
Yeah, so we are hoping that we can actually start that soon, right, and come up with a concrete decision, in terms of the change of the image of the Queen on the EC currency.
Rosbert, thank you so much for speaking with us on ECCB Connects and for sharing this update about the EC Polymer Bank Notes.
The pleasure was certainly mine. Thank you too.
Celebrating ECCB at 40.
Did you know that the current Deputy Governor of the ECCB, Dr. Valda F. Henry, is the first woman to hold this position? Dr. Henry was born in the Commonwealth of Dominica and is the third Deputy Governor, having assumed office in September 2021. Now you know, celebrating ECCB at 40.
That's it for this episode of ECCB Connects. We've been speaking with Director of the Currency Management Department at the ECCB, Rosbert Humphrey, about the EC Polymer Bank Notes. Rosbert reminded us of some of the important security and tactile features of the EC Polymer Notes. He shared that the EC paper banknotes still remain legal tender and can be used to transact business and pay for your goods and services. He also looked ahead and shared that the EC Polymer banknotes will soon undergo some changes to their physical appearance with the replacement of the image of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Thanks for watching, and be sure to join us next week when we bring you another episode of ECCB Connects and share with you who we are, what we do, and how we serve you.